From the Tapped Out Wrestling Network studio, we bring you the original Tapped Out Wrestling podcast with your hosts, Nick McDaniel and Myron Fancher. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to a very special edition of the Tapped Out Wrestling Podcast Network. We are here today. I'm, of course, Nick. I'm joined by my buddy Myron.
Good evening, folks.
And ladies and gentlemen, we have a very special guest on the air today. It is Mr. Bobby Mathews, communications professional / freelance writer. Welcome, Bobby.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Hey. Now, we discovered you and your Twitter and all this because I had seen a link someone had posted to the story on Pro Wrestling Stories about Continental. Mm-hmm. And reading that article was so captivating. It's led me to read more stuff you did. It's fascinating. Can you tell us a little of yourself and how you got into writing and how you got into wrestling?
Sure. First of all, I tell people that I'm the best writer you've never heard of. So I started off always wanting to write. I went to Troy University where I obtained a degree in journalism, worked as a newspaper reporter and editor for about 15 years. Finally ran into a publisher who made me hate the business so much I couldn't take it anymore, and ran away and worked in PR from there. And now I am a freelance writer doing work for hire. Sometimes my name's on it, sometimes it's not. As far as wrestling, man, I will tell you, a name that no one will ever remember. The first guy that I can remember is a guy named Johnny Eagles, who was a British wrestler, and he was known as the man who could escape any hold, the man who had a counter for everything. And he was big in Gulf Coast / Southeast, which was out of Pensacola, Dublin, that area. And he was big in Pacific Northwest, feuding with Jonathan Boyd and with of Sheepherder fame, and with Buddy Rose. So the guy just sparked my imagination. This guy who could do anything, who knew the counter for every hold. I remember being just spellbound by him. So from there, I grew up on Southeastern and Continental, and yeah.
Cool. That's where I grew up in Birmingham watching Continental.
Mm-hmm.
Nick grew up in Florida watching Florida Championship Wrestling and just about everything else. It was a great time to be a wrestling fan, in my opinion.
Oh, it was. It absolutely was.
It was back in the day where they focused more on the performance in the ring wasn't as great and it wasn't as athletic as it is, but they focused on the stories, and you got passionate stories that people got involved into. The fans were involved. Everybody in the crowd was yelling and screaming, not cheering.
So here's the thing, and we had talked a little bit about this, off the air, but Sheamus has come out and said that WWE product, the pro wrestling product currently is better than it ever has been because the athletes are better. Well, here's the thing. I cared whether or not Ken Lucas and Bob Armstrong were going to whip the Midnight Express's ass. Tell me the last time anybody cared about a Sheamus match.
No, that's hard to say. That is hard to say.
The only guy who cares about Sheamus is his workout partner.
Pretty much.
The guy with the big nose who runs things now. Yeah.
Now,
I just talked myself out of the job.
Yeah, I'm about to say careful now. Yeah.
I got on my Vince McMahon mugshot T-shirt. I still don't know where McMahon was arrested, but I love this T-shirt. To me, looking at it today and the past, is if I wanted to watch athletes, I'd watch MMA.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Wrestling has always presented me with the story and the athletic competition together.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you see the story these days? Where do you see the quality of the writing?
These days, I see a lot of the quality of the writing on SmackDown, where you have Brian James, the road dog, the son of the legendary Bullet Bob Armstrong,
Yes.
who is kind of heading up creative over there. If I have my information correct, stories over there in WWE are a little bit better.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm a huge fan of Ring of Honor. I think they do a great job. And I don't speak any Japanese, so I have to rely on English translation. But the stories that I can follow without even knowing the language are in New Japan. So,
See, I've tried to watch New Japan, and I don't know if I've not watched enough of it, or I saw an episode that didn't translate, or if I'm just too stuck in the current product, because it was just weird. It had a very continental feel from the way that it was shot and the atmosphere. It looked like it was good wrestling, and it looked like it was the people there understood it. I just couldn't get it to translate to me.
Here's probably one of the problems, and it's one of my problems when I first started watching it. Nobody sells shit. You know, I mean, nobody sells anything. You bring out a Tommy gun and shoot. What's the guy's name? The Rainmaker, Okada. You could shoot him, kill him, have him in the casket, and he'd still be standing up waiting to give you a clothesline. Nobody sells anything. That's one of my problems with that product. I prefer. I mean, I'm one of those guys. I've been in a dressing room before where I have heard a manager I won't name because I would love to be allowed back in the dressing room again. Tell the guy, I want you to sell that fucking leg. I want you to sell it the whole match. I want you to sell it after the match. I want you to sell it going home. I don't want you to stop selling it until you're 100 miles away from here.
Yes.
I mean,
when you see a match these days, and somebody manages to carry off that where they have something that they're selling, and they remember to do it when they're leaving the ring, or they'll sell it the whole match. I think Sami Zayn probably is the best at that.
I would agree.
He'll roll around and he'll limp and he'll do it the whole time.
Sure, and he doesn't just lay there either. Yeah. He doesn't just lay there. He's actually grimacing in pain. You see the pain on his face. You see the pain in his body language. I feel like being under a mask for a long time for him probably helped him with his body language.
Oh,
because his body language. When you're under a hood, you have to use your entire body language. You can't use your facial expression. You have to use your body language to get over what's happening to you. And I think that probably helped him a great deal.
That may be one of the most profound things I've ever heard. That is so interesting. I'm still trying to absorb it because you're 100% right.
And I'll let you take. I'll let you get to take on this because one of our biggest complaints is I know the recent storyline. I'm sure you caught. Braun destroys Roman Reigns on Raw a couple weeks ago, and the biggest poll we put a poll up on our Twitter feed was, how long is it before Roman Reigns is back on TV like nothing's wrong?
Right.
Because that's your biggest fear, because that happens on a regular basis. They have a match the night before on a pay-per-view, and it could be a Hell in a Cell, or it could be something crazy, and then the next night the guy walks out like he's fine. And that's
walks out after having the match of his life, after taking a beating, not bruised anywhere, not limping, nothing. It's, hey, I know, we all know it's a show, but if you're watching another weekly TV show, there's continuity involved here, Make me believe it. Put me in that for that hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, put me in that continuity, make me believe it for that time that I'm sitting in front of the TV.
It's looking like a Michael Bay movie lately.
Right? Oh, my gosh. I don't want to come off as one of those guys, I miss wrestling when I was wrestling guys, or the it's still real to me guy,
Yeah.
But here's the thing, like, when we talk about Continental and Southeastern, what comes to mind for me as a fan and as a writer now, I look back at that and you see the consistency of the characters. You knew Dennis Condrey and Randy Rose were going to be assholes. That's what they were, So, and you knew that they were going to do whatever they could do to screw over the baby faces, to maintain their position in the card, to make as much money as they could. They had it. Their motives were pride and money.
Mm-hmm.
And those are two of the biggest motivators for anybody.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And they would just take it farther than any decent person would. And it was incredibly compelling. It's simple storytelling.
Oh, yeah. You got
Easy.
so involved.
Yeah.
I remember the first time I saw the Lord Humongous and being
Mm-hmm.
terrified. It's
Right,
like, he's
absolutely.
big. I'm in my grandmother's
Mm-hmm.
living room, laying on the carpet floor watching. And he was a scary dude.
So a couple of different guys, I think 3 or 4 actually, played Lord Humongous. My favorite still is Sid Vicious,
Yes.
Sid Justice, whatever you want to call him. So, and here's the reason. I was a big mark. I would stay behind the farm center in Dothan, Alabama. I would get there early just so I could watch the guys walk in. And here comes this guy in like a weird kind of hood. I want to say, at this late date, I want to say he had a stocking over his head. Like he had stopped somewhere and put a stocking over his head. And he unlimbers himself out of a Chevy Chevette. Can you imagine Sid Vicious was wearing that car? I mean, he was wearing it. He wasn't driving it.
He could put his feet to the floor like Fred Flintstone.
Exactly. That's it was amazing. But in his getup, with the not speaking, with all of that just menacing look that he had, oh my God, he was terrifying. He was not, to me, not as scary as Joe LeDuc or the Mongolian Stomper, but those guys were scary for a different reason. Well, LeDuc was scary because he was crazy.
Yeah.
Have you guys ever seen the video that, and LeDuc did this in several different territories. He would bring out the double-bitted axe, the double-bladed axe, huge handle, and he would bare his forearm, and he would take that axe, and he would say, "I am going to make a blood oath." You know, it's like the scene in with Joe Pesci, the 2 Utes. What's a Ute? You know, in the so, but what's an oath? He's saying, "I'm going to make a blood oath," and he would for a shoot cut his arm on TV with the blade of that axe, and leave another scar on his body where he swore on his own blood that he was going to get whomever. I think in Memphis he did it with Jerry Lawler. In Continental he did it with Austin Idol. You know, so stuff like that, those guys scared me. Those guys were real.
Now, how about Kevin Sullivan?
You know, I don't like a lot of Kevin Sullivan stuff. I think Kevin Sullivan is brilliant. I absolutely think he is brilliant. He annoys me. So I think the stuff that he did in CWF was in Florida. You know, you have it gets confusing because you say CWF, and for somebody who's in Alabama, that means Continental Wrestling Federation around here.
Yes.
So, but we're talking championship wrestling in Florida. So I felt like the stuff that he did in Florida was great, and it really fit in Tampa. And he had a guy who played off of it so well in Dusty Rhodes, and then also in Blackjack Mulligan. When he came to Alabama to be the booker in Continental, I don't think it worked as well, just because the difference in the babyface. Bob Armstrong's a great babyface, but he is a different kind of babyface than Dusty Rhodes. So for whatever reason, it didn't work as well, even though Sullivan had been in the territory back in the late 1970s, living in Pensacola, and on his podcast, Kevin Sullivan will tell you he knew Hulk Hogan when Hogan was living in a van on the beach in Pensacola.
I can imagine that.
Sterling Golden.
He scared the hell out of me, though. And, you know, I'd be a good little Southern Baptist boy. We'd go to church, and then I'd watch wrestling, and it'd be like, "Oh my God, he's the devil. He's evil." It's just
But did it?
the characters were so much larger than life than they are now.
Mm-hmm.
And there weren't all the special effects. There wasn't all the pyro. There wasn't all the fancy shot scenes where they worked stuff in, and the dark arenas, and like at WrestleMania where there are bugs crawling around the ring. It was just the characters were played so strongly, and you did your same gimmick from territory to territory. You found what worked, and you took it from different places. You didn't stay in the same place and let it get worn out.
Right. That's one of the hard things. That's one of the hard things. You look at the appetite for professional wrestling. You had 12, 15 territories of pro wrestling that were, drawing 25,000 people a week all over the country, I mean, you had Don Owen in Portland, and it's partially because they were so isolated. But they're drawing fans into the late 80s and I think into the early 90s. If my math may be off on that.
They were one of the last few to go, weren't they?
Yeah, they were one of the last ones to go. So here's the deal. Look, now, and Rip Rogers said this to me, and I absolutely agree with him. Now, WWE is like Ringling Brothers. It is like the Harlem Globetrotters. It's a thing you go to. It's not something that you invest your life into. There were people who, when Bob Armstrong turned on Ron Fuller had won this is in 82, either late 82, early 83, when Bob Armstrong turned heel. All right, so Bob was Southeastern champion, but had been overlooked for an NWA world title shot because Fuller had a rematch clause with the NWA champion. All right, so Fuller gets his match with Ric Flair and has Flair in the Fuller leg lock, which is his finishing hold, and Bob Armstrong is the special referee. Armstrong leaps into the air, drives a knee right across Fuller's chest, and begins to beat the ever-living hell out of Ron Fuller. And this babyface, he's been a babyface since the 1960s. Holy shit.
Yeah.
People were in tears. People hated Bob Armstrong. Bob Armstrong's 1983 heel run, never seen anything like it. People were so angry with him, they wanted to kill him.
Yeah.
People had to be physically restrained in some of the arenas. I remember seeing in Dothan a guy coming from the top of the farm center. I had no idea what was going on. I was a little kid. I was 12. So guy coming from the top of the farm center, running down the bleachers, hops the railing going into the ring, hops into the ring, and tries to get at Bob Armstrong with something in his hands. Never makes it. Larry Brock and whoever Bob was wrestling at the time leg dived the guy and got him out of the ring. But it was damn near a riot,
Yeah, I can imagine. The arenas where I saw wrestling when it was Continental and Southeastern and versus arenas, they played Boutwell. The WWE played the BJCC. The atmosphere was different.
Absolutely.
It was a bigger. You saw the WWE TV show from afar. If they came to town, you got to see some of the stuff. But when you knew all the action was happening in Birmingham or Dothan or nearby you, and I don't know, the guys just seemed like people you might know. They weren't wrestlers as much as they were community figures or people that, like you would imagine being your friends or your heroes. Yeah.
Jim Cornette talks about Ricky Morton, who would be taking a hellacious beating in the ring, and he would connect with the fans in the front row, in the second row, in the third row, all the way up to the top. Ricky would be laying there, holding his hand out, reaching toward the fans, going, "Help me. Help," mouthing the words, "Help me." It is amazing Ricky Morton didn't get somebody killed You know?
Yeah.
I mean, but that was the kind of like. Now we all know it's a show, so it's like the wrestlers do not attempt to make that personal connection, that real connection that you can make from the ring with someone in the audience. Dustin Rhodes, Goldust, talks about this. He talks about when he's wrestling, he picks out a fan, and his goal during his match is to create that moment of doubt in that fan's mind. That guy who probably doesn't believe anything going on in the ring is real. He wants to create that moment of doubt, lift that disbelief up in the air, get the suspension of disbelief going. So that to me, that is missing in a lot of the product today.
I hate the fact that the Goldust character has gone on this long, and Dustin hasn't done something outside that and had more of a role and been able to do more. I love the Goldust character, but I think that was something that should have stopped. I think he should have had more output. I hated to see Cody leave, but Cody's making it for himself these days.
Sure.
He's apparently going to settle down in Ring of Honor and wrestle and enjoy himself. He tours with his wife. He's found what makes him happy.
Absolutely. So I disagree with you, and I'll tell you a couple of reasons that I disagree with you. I respectfully disagree about Goldust. I mean, absolutely. The reason it works for me is because Dustin has tried other characters. Do you remember Seven or whatever the hell that was?
Horrible. Yeah.
You know, I mean, he's tried other things, or he's had people try to put other things on him. Even the natural Dustin Rhodes, which is probably going to be always my favorite iteration of him, because he and I are about the same age or pretty close. So I grew up seeing this guy in WCW and me going, damn, if I had had a rich daddy who wrestled, I could have been doing that too. Dang. But so my sympathy is with him, kind of. That's my favorite iteration of his character. But Goldust has worked for him. It has made him famous. It has brought him money, and you can't complain with it. Here's my complaint is not about the character. My complaint is let him evolve, let him do something. The teaming with Ron Killings was interesting and kind of fun, but the guy is so talented. He is so talented. He is that guy who deserves that kind of one last run into the spotlight. Yeah. That would be incredibly valuable for him as a character, and I think it would complete his kind of redemption from his drug and alcohol issues. Not just coming back and getting employed by WWE, but coming back and kind of making that climb.
Yes. That's always a good feel-good story people love, and they should capitalize on that.
Yeah, I would love to see as crazy as this might sound to some, I would love to see a heel Goldust, the turn, and say he's tired of being the comedy character. He wants to be taken serious. Go back to and for all purposes' sake, I would love to see him move over to SmackDown.
Yeah,
and like make that heel turn, jump over to SmackDown, and that way, because we've mentioned it a couple times now, the writing on SmackDown seems to work a little better, and I think they could use some of that veteran leadership over there on SmackDown. Yeah. And they could, he would have the opportunity to make his last run per se, like you were talking about.
Absolutely, I completely agree with that. You could even put the title on him and give him the Lion in Winter kind of treatment. And by that I mean, he is the old hand who has finally succeeded. He has finally won. He is finally at the top, and all of these young lions, these young men who want their turn, who need their turn in the sun, are coming for him, and he will do anything and everything, and his desperation grows to hold on to his fame, to hold on to his title. That would be incredibly compelling. You could run that for 6 months easily,
Oh yeah. No, where do you see him out after the business? Do you think he's a guy that'll go in the broadcast table, or somebody will go backstage, or?
I think he's incredibly talented at whatever he chooses to do. I think that he actually should be a guy who's training kids in NXT.
Like his father.
Yeah, I think he should. I think he should absolutely be at the Performance Center. He has a ton of experience doing everything that a professional wrestler should do. So my selfish side goes, I hope that he trains another generation of kids.
Oh, that would be great. I just, I'm at this point where I keep, if I'm not playing fantasy baseball, I'm playing fantasy broadcast table.
Sure.
Because I need to see more talent on there, and I need to see one or two faces go away, particularly JBL right now.
Oh man, JBL.
Huge JBL fan when he was Bradshaw with APA, and that's it. That's the only time I've ever really been invested in the character, and the rest of the time he's just been a jerk. And I'm assuming the JBL character was closer to what he is now and who he really is. And where is this bullying thing going with him?
So here's, have you ever heard Mike Graham talk about Double J, Jeff Jarrett? Said,
no, I have not.
All right, so Mike Graham said, he broke 1,000 guitars, never drew a dime. So, and I always feel like that's the case with JBL. He's potatoed a lot of guys, never drew a dime. Here's the thing. In any athletic workplace, you're going to have guys who haze the rookies, who, and this is not excusing it, okay? This is not excusing it. Stay with me and we'll get there.
Okay.
So you're going to have guys who will haze the rookies. You have guys who will play practical jokes or ribs. And then you have something different. Then you have ongoing targeted harassment, which is what JBL has done. If the accusations against him are true, and I'm led to believe those, he talks about, I play a heel on TV. The incidents that people relate about him aren't on TV. They're all behind the scenes. So that's not playing a heel on TV. So now mainstream media is getting involved in this. Yahoo and Sports Illustrated and the Huffington Post, a ton of outlets have picked up the JBL WWE
and that's
bullying
that's
story.
when the WWE starts doing something, is when somebody starts actually noticing in the real world. Because they love that legitimacy. They love that to anything real, but when it reflects negatively, that's when they just hate it. It's a wrecking ball.
Absolutely. That's exactly it. So they want that legitimacy. They want to be covered by mainstream media, but when it's bad press, stuff happens. So what I don't see JBL, unfortunately, leaving WWE. I think he's probably too politically connected.
Yeah,
we might see him off TV for a little while, but I doubt that he will suffer any serious punishment.
Yeah, he's basically the voice of Vince McMahon in the headset. So when I hear him talk, it's just, you're hearing McMahon. You're hearing a 70-year-old man who is blasted on steroids and doers that is not quite in, not quite in the current day, but he's still the greatest genius in wrestling of all time. So and it's coming through I don't know. With sports, though, when you get bullies, you get a bully in a high school sport, they're gone in 3 years. You get a bully in a college sport, 3 or 4 years. JBL is maintained to stay there. He's not graduated. He's not moved on. He's not been a free agent. He's not been drafted to another team. He stayed in the same place and been the ranking bully for a long time.
Absolutely. And here's the thing. You see, at the end of the day, when you stand up to him, that is when his bullying stops for an individual. Then he bullies other people, or then he backs down and says, oh, I don't mean it. You know, I mean, Joey Styles, who's 5'5" and $160, cold cocked him and laid him out at one point. Steve Blackman was going to kill him for a little anal finger play that he was trying, and here's the thing. JBL is absolutely the definition of a bully. He picks on people who are less powerful than he is, and he's extremely powerful in that company because he is exactly Vince's voice on air. I was listening to, just to prepare for today, I was listening to JBL go off in character on Mauro Ranallo, talking about, his cheesiness, his non sequiturs. Well, here's the thing. Mauro is cheesy. He does occasionally throw out the non sequitur, the trying too hard, reference.
He tries to put in those social references, the social media references, so he can make himself relevant.
Right. But here's the thing. There is no other announcer in WWE who can carry a serious moment the way that he can. No offense to Michael Cole, who, frankly, he's not my taste, but I also recognize the fact that he's carrying the bad end of the shit stick.
Yeah, exactly.
He's got,
did you watch any of the UK tournament?
I'm sorry, say that again?
Did you watch any of the UK tournament on the network?
I did. That was phenomenal.
And Michael Cole was calling, and he sounded like a different person because there was no one there telling him what to do.
And so Michael Cole has a long history in journalism. He knows how to cover something. He knows how to prepare. If you're not in his ear constantly, I mean, I think that he does a fine job, and I think he was with Nigel McGuinness, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so those guys both added something. The UK tournament was probably my favorite thing out of WWE, not named Shinsuke Nakamura.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with you.
So Shinsuke just does it for me for some reason. I don't know why. I'm just like, that guy's cool.
Because he connects without talking. He didn't even have to. I mean, he talks some, but he is able to. He has this weird charisma that connects with people. Not even talking to them.
Absolutely, and if they let him do what he can do, he is going to be over like Rover. I mean, he's going to be huge. So I think one of the other things that we wanted to talk about real quick, just to segue and transition. Am I stealing anybody's thunder here?
Nope.
No, go ahead, buddy.
Well, I was told that you guys are belt marks.
Oh yeah, Nick.
Yeah, actually, that was my next thing on my list was to ask you about the article that that was one when doing the research for the show. I had come across that article, and I'm a huge fan of title belts, so I actually did want to ask you about that, how that article came to be, your visit with Dave, and how that all kind of went.
Okay. So here's the thing. I will, if I see something cool or interesting, I will basically cold call somebody. I'll say, hey, can I talk to you about X, Y, or Z? And Dave Millican lives fairly close to me, lives outside of Huntsville, Alabama, lives just across the border in Tennessee. And I realized, 2-hour drive up I-65. So I emailed him, or actually I tweeted at him first. He gave me his email, and we set something up. I went up to visit him, and I walk in, and I am just blown away. I am marking out all over the place. I forget the fact that I'm actually supposed to be there as a writer and, interview this guy. Son of a bitch, I was there for 3 hours. I got 20 minutes of our conversation on tape.
Well, it seemed like it implanted on you strongly enough that you were able to take it and turn it into that wonderful article you did.
Absolutely. I felt like Aladdin in the cave with the treasures,
Yeah.
I mean, that's exactly what I was like. I wonder, if he doesn't look over here, can I sneak this thing under my shirt? Would he notice? And he would have. But I can tell you this about Dave. A fantastic guy, straight shooter, super smart, one of the nicest people I have met in the business. And the great thing is, so I shot Dave a copy of the article before it was published, and I said, hey, I just wanted you to know this is the direction that I'm taking with it. It looks different than what I thought it was going to look. And he emailed me back, and he goes, well, you got this, 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 and this wrong. And I went, oh, damn. You know? So, because I'm a pretty good writer. I say that I try to not be falsely modest.
Well, if you got it, you got to flaunt it, man.
Yeah, so I'm a pretty good writer. I'm used to people going, wow, this is really good. So when Dave said, hey, listen, here are some problems that I see, I tried to take that seriously and worked back with him to make sure that I could be as factually accurate as I could. And I think that he really appreciated that. He said, you know, he had not had a reporter or a writer or media person really work with him at that level to make sure that everything was specifically, you know, was correct. But I will say this, the belts that he has collected, the ones that meant the most to me, I mean, being able to, on my Facebook page, I have a picture of me with the NWA Dome Globe belt, which is not Flair's belt, okay? But it is absolutely gorgeous and amazing, and I was holding it, and I'm looking at my hands, and I'm going, wow, my hands are shaking actually holding this belt. There's some reverence there still, you know, that's the world title that I grew up with. So I'm like, if I drop this, am I going to break it? You know? So.
Yeah, when I think of that title, I always, for some reason, Harley Race is always in my head.
Mm-hmm.
That just for some reason that, you know, that's exactly for some reason. It's just always been, that was Harley's belt. Flair's belt was always the big gold belt, but so, you know, I mean, Flair was on TBS with the big gold belt for longer than he was on anywhere else with the 10 pounds of gold. It just happens that the 10 pounds of gold was the first belt that I saw Ric Flair hold. You know, and
Ric Flair could hold a belt like it was a display piece.
What's really funny to me, like me and some buddies have had kind of a Rick had a peculiar way sometimes of holding the Dome Globe. We called it the loaf of bread. Like he would tuck it under his arm. And if you ever go back and watch Georgia Championship Wrestling, he would kind of tuck it under his arm. I don't know if there were times when the belt might have been damaged or was going to be, you know, something else was going to be done to it, or it was going to be re-leathered or you know, corrected or whatever. But we would see when he would have the belt under his arm as a loaf of bread. And now as an adult, I go, I wonder what happened. You know, I wonder why he's not displaying it like he normally would. But I will tell you this, Dave Millican, the championship belts that he makes, I understand why he has a years-long waiting list. The guy is a craftsman. He is absolutely a craftsman, and he is painstaking in the work that he does, and you can tell why he has the reputation he has, why he works with Reggie Parks, because he is the premier belt maker in the world.
I did not realize Reggie Parks was still making belts.
He is. He also so he and Reggie, Dave, and a guy named Rico Mann all work together under the Midwest Championship Belts banner. If I have this correct, and if I don't, when Dave listens to this podcast, he'll text me and tell me what I got wrong. So
that's the master.
Absolutely. So Reggie still, and Reggie has a backlog of belts. Dave has a backlog of belts. They're working to get those out. If I'm correct, and I'm not looking at my notes at the moment, but if I'm correct about this, Reggie will be 83 in August of this year, and he still crafts belts, and they're still amazing. The first belts he ever made, the AWA Midwest Tag belts, I have held those things in my hands. You could take those and put them on TV tomorrow. They are.
Those are ones.
Incredible.
Didn't he make those for himself?
He did make those for himself and his partner, Doug Gilbert, not Eddie's brother. So
I was fascinated when I read that.
Yeah, he made them for himself and his tag team partner because he didn't want to carry around a 5-foot-tall trophy, which was the Midwest Tag Team title at the time. I mean, and hey, the belts were a lot easier to carry, I'm sure.
Yes. Yep.
So the other belt that I got to hold that had just a tremendous amount of history was the AWA tag belts that Vern Gagne and Mad Dog Vachon and Crusher and Dick the Bruiser and the Road Warriors and Jesse Ventura and Adrian Adonis and those guys had held. And like it's a legit belt retired by the Road Warriors in 1984. Wow. And that's a piece of history. It was amazing.
Now those are belts you saw them carry, Nick? When they was AWA what you watched?
We did. We actually here on Superstars of Wrestling in Atlanta, they carried AWA as well, and that was like the beginning, of the Road Warriors. Yeah, that was when they had those titles. Those were the ones I first saw them with. Absolutely.
My favorite thing about the article was seeing the evolution of belts, like all the different age belts that he had, from the first belts to the most recent stuff. It was. It was wild. It was just an evolutionary type thing.
It's one of those things where, it's amazing to see what they used to be, what they became, and what they are now. It's crazy.
I would have loved to see that, man. I would have loved to see that.
I would tell you that I would get Dave to extend you an invitation, but. Guys, I'm sorry. I got to protect myself. I don't want to share. I want to get invited. I want to get invited back on occasion.
I can't blame you. Well, man, we have had a great time talking to you, haven't we, Nick?
Absolutely, yeah. And I mean, definitely, we want to do this again if this is something.
Yeah.
But there's a couple things we actually, when we have our, guest on, we always have a couple things we like to allow them to do. One of them is I did want to talk to you about, I know you've got some things in the works right now. Why don't you tell our listeners kind of like what you're working on right now?
Oh man, I have so many things in the works. It's not even funny. So I've reached out to Randy Rose of the original Midnight Express, and I'm trying to put together a retrospective of the Midnight Express from the Midnight Express Incorporated, which started in Southeastern Championship Wrestling and was Norvell Austin, Dennis Condrey, and Randy Rose. 3-man team similar to the original Freebirds, or well, the 3-man version of the Freebirds. So I'm working on that. I'm working on a list of masked wrestlers, kind of talking about what it's like to be behind the hood.
Ooh. Because those were always my favorite.
See, there are some of them that I really like. Like, I should be talking with Bob Armstrong May 13th. I'm also hoping to talk with Jody Hamilton and Mr. Olympia, Jerry Stubbs, who is an extremely cool guy. And, it's one of those things where I want to be, and if you have not, this is not my project, but if you have not read Len Denton, who is the Grappler, if you have not read his autobiography, you need to read it. It's a great story about being a masked wrestler in North America.
Oh, wow.
So,
I'll have to put that on my list. Definitely. Definitely.
So, and I'm also working on, I legit have a list of things that I'm working on for ProWrestlingStories.com. The other thing that is up here Saturday, I am dropping a story about wrestlers going into politics. Talk a little bit about Kane's candidacy for mayor of Knox County, Tennessee, as well as stuff like B. Brian Blair running for office. He was one of the Killer Bees, if you'll remember him.
Yep.
Jerry Lawler running for mayor of Memphis twice and losing twice. The only jobs Lawler ever did in Memphis. That's not true. That's not true, but it's a funny line that'll probably.
But damn near close. Yeah. Damn near close.
Right?
Yeah. When we go back to talking about the titles, I know the Southern title out of Memphis. Everybody says, why did Lawler hold it the most? Well, he lost it the most, but he always got it back. He always got his win back. That was it,
Always got his win back. And I have it on good authority. So Dave Millican's really good friends with Jerry Lawler, and apparently Jerry's just a fantastic guy. He sounds like just a great guy to hang out with. And maybe one day I can twist Dave's arm into letting me take a trip up to Memphis with him.
Yeah, sit down at Jerry's restaurant.
Oh, that'd be great, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
So I'm also working on a couple of other stories. So we'll do politics story this Saturday, masked wrestlers, and I am working on two really fun stories. One is 1980s Texas wrestling, which would, if you look at the size of Texas, an enormous state, and at one point you had 5 promotions running in Texas at the same time.
That was what, nobody wanted that show on the Prichard podcast. But in secret, that's one of my favorite of the Prichard podcast is the Texas Wrestling Show. Even though I didn't, it was out so far outside my league and I really didn't know anything about it, but it was his stuff. You got to hear about him and Dr. Tom growing up, and it was just, it was just special. You could tell he was very passionate about it.
Absolutely. And the next story behind that one is a story on British wrestlers in the U.S., talking about people like, obviously, William Regal, but then other guys like Les Thornton, like Tony Charles, who no one remembers at this date, who was just a fantastic wrestler. Guys like Billy Robinson, who Vern Gagne was always scared to put the AWA title on Billy Robinson because Robinson was the guy in the ring that Vern didn't think he could handle. The only world title on North American soil that Billy Robinson ever held, I believe, is the CWA title that he got from Austin Idol. I think he either beat Idol and was supposed to rematch him, and then was like, I'm not putting that guy over because Robinson was real and Idol was a worker, So
yeah. That British mat style is fascinating to watch, even though it really does not translate to the main, like, what people want to see over here. I've always liked watching it. Chris Adams, Regal was always a favorite of mine.
Sure. When you look at it, and one of the things that I think is really neat is, so this is one of the reasons Regal is so good, because he took British wrestling and he really adapted it to an American style, still keeping in, like, I always love the overhand wrist lock, the top wrist lock kind of test of strength thing, where Regal would step on the back of his opponent's knee, because that looks real. That's something that a wily veteran grappler would do, and that's a common British thing. Not so common in the States. Anyway, so all of that is lined up, and I'm trying to drop a long form piece at this point every month, and we may speed that up. But basically, my next 6 months worth of long form pro wrestling stories are pretty well set out.
And that's going to all go on Pro Wrestling Stories?
Yes, all of those are going to go on ProWrestlingStories.com. I got to give a shout out to the owner of the site, JP Zarka, who is a great guy to work with and pays on time. And as a freelance writer, that you can't really,
I bet.
that really is important. I got 2 small kids. I gotta keep them fed, and gotta,
Oh, yeah.
My wife occasionally likes me to bring home money.
I have to be real careful on that Pro Wrestling Stories website because I won't get up. If I sit down at my desk, I'm like, okay, I want to read this story because I was dying to read that belt story, and hadn't had a chance. And before long, I was there like 2-3 hours just going from story to story to story. Your stuff, always, I loved everything I read you wrote. I read a weird article about Dino Bravo and his death and just little things like that. And I just kept clicking to story. It's just fascinating.
Oh, and I do have a really fun story coming up, and it depends on how it comes together. Just real quick to plug this because it's a lot of fun. It is how Bob Roop, Ron Garvin, and Boris Malenko and Bob Orton Jr. tried to hijack the Knoxville Southeastern Territory from Ron Fuller.
Oh, wow.
That one you'll have to keep in touch with us and let us know when that one's coming out, definitely.
Absolutely. It's so much fun. I found out that Bob Root had actually written an account of it from his perspective. When I talk with Bob Armstrong soon, I'm hoping that I'll be able to talk with Ron and Robert Fuller as well, and hopefully they won't throw me out because it's an unpleasant story for them because Ronnie Garvin actually won the Knoxville version of the Southeastern title and in a stipulation also won Ron Fuller's boat. It was supposed to be kayfabed. Okay? It's supposed to be kayfabed. Well, here's the thing. Garvin took the belt and the boat as a shoot. And so here's the fun part. I'm probably letting the cat out of the bag here a little bit, but this is kind of fun and a little inside baseball here. But Fuller took Garvin to court to get the title belt back and to get the boat back. The boat more than the title belt. Title belt could be easily replaced. But the trial was won by Garvin when Fuller got on the stand and refused to break kayfabe.
That's awesome.
How did he get the belt? How did he get the belt? How did he win? How did he get the boat? Well, he won it. Case closed. It's his property. So.
Wow.
So
that's dedication,
man.
That's why it was much better back then.
Absolutely.
Oh man.
Yeah. So I've got a full slate of stories going on ProWrestlingStories.com, and I appreciate the comments and the compliments on the site. I know JP will appreciate that as well when he hears it.
Yeah. If anybody out there just wants to kill
hours,
the rest of your day, go there to now. Just click on one of Bob's stories. Click on some of the other stories. Rick Martel has a piece on there. There's a fascinating piece done. It's told by Bret the Hitman Hart about the time Vince McMahon got hammered in a bar with him. It's just so. It's behind the scenes. It is the scenes. It's read after read. It's like watching good music videos on YouTube where you'll sit there all day.
Right.
Just go from one piece to the next.
I appreciate those words, and I know JP will as well. And hey, guys, the check's in the mail on that too. Thank you.
Speaking of paying the bills, we also know that you do a few things. Obviously, our crowd is a huge wrestling fan. If they're listening to the podcast, they're wrestling fans. But to keep the bills paid, I know you do some other things outside of wrestling. So we were going to let you. You have a book that's on Amazon. So go ahead and plug that book and kind of let everybody know, and then we will actually we will put this on the Twitter feed, the Facebook page, the website, and everything, so you can find it. But go ahead and kind of tell them what it is.
Okay. So back in 2010, oh my God, that's 7 years. Yeah. I wrote a book called Prodigal, which is a story of a rock star, a guitarist who loses the use of his left arm. If you know anything about guitar players, kind of important to have both arms. He returns to his small Alabama hometown where he begins an affair with his brother's wife. And from there, things go to hell, as one might expect. Yes. So I actually have a copy of the book in front of me here, and it says, the back jacket copy says, Johnny Riles was the ultimate bad example until a drug-fueled car accident brought him crashing to a halt. Alone and unable to continue his musical career, Johnny returns to his hometown in rural Alabama. To everyone there, he's just John Riley, a constant screw-up and delinquent. Starting an affair with his brother's wife didn't elevate anyone's opinion of him either. But when Johnny's brother, a football star hero turned cop, finds out about the fling, things get really messy. with a couple of murderous cops on their tail, Johnny and his mistress will do whatever it takes to survive, if they can. So, and the book is Prodigal. I'm biased, but I think it's pretty good. It's gotten some good reviews on Amazon. And,
yeah. It actually has a 4.5-star rating. Right now, I looked this morning just before we started recording. It's a 4.5-star rating.
Man, I buy a lot of things on Amazon, and 4 stars. I don't buy anything under it. Anything above it's wonderful stuff.
So,
so
again,
you've got
guys,
good props.
Yeah, thank you very much. Again, the check's in the mail. I appreciate you guys putting me over like that.
Yeah.
No.
And I also,
when we come to your territory, if you'll put us over.
Well, real quick, I do want to throw in there. It's available in Kindle as of this morning, the recording. It's available. The Kindle version was $2.99. The paperback's $13. If you like my wife, she says she likes to feel the paper in her fingers. And I'm like, okay, go with that.
And I will tell you, the shoot on that too, guys. I get the same amount of money.
Yeah.
from sales of either copy. So if you all want to buy a book, feel free.
Stan Lee said that digital comic books and paper comic books, it's all nice, but they're like breasts. They're fun to look at, but sometimes you want to have the real thing in your hands.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So definitely. But go ahead. I know you had one other thing you wanted to plug too.
I do have one other thing to plug, and I got to top that story because it's hilarious. I just want to top that with a journalism school story, because sometimes you'll ask someone or you'll hear the question, how long should this story be? And the answer to that is always, a good story is like a good skirt. It is long enough to cover the subject, but short enough to keep it interesting.
Nice.
That's perfect, man.
My last plug, later this year, I will be shooting and dropping a web series. It's my first web series on professional wrestling, and it is based on Georgia's all-star wrestling, where the widow of one wrestler tried to stay involved in the promotion of wrestling in and around, I believe, Augusta. Mm-hmm. And she was forced out. So it is kind of late 70s, early 80s themed. And it is a story kind of the way that I tell people about it. It is pro wrestling meets Game of Thrones.
That should be a hot read then, because that'll appeal to everybody.
I hope so.
There's people that tell me, you got to watch Game of Thrones, you got to watch Game of Thrones, you got to watch Game of Thrones. Well, I've watching wrestling.
Me neither.
I've heard it's great. I've heard it's fantastic. But I have never seen it, hadn't read the books.
People are just so passionate about it.
Yeah. So apparently I need to read the books.
There's a really
it's a lot of reading. Yeah, you might want to watch the TV show.
From what I've seen, these are like War and Peace level books. Now, I love to read, don't get me wrong, but good God, that's a lot.
This guy knows a lot of words.
Yeah.
Right.
Those come in handy sometimes.
That chick's wearing a long skirt. Let's go with that. Let's just
right. Hey, again, how long should that story be?
Yeah, exactly. So anything else, man, you got going on? You plug your website or anything like that?
No, yeah. I guess I should tell people to come read my stuff, and other writers like J.P. Zarka and Mark Madison have stories at ProWrestlingStories.com. And again, JP is the founder of the site, and he is the owner and editor, and again, the guy who pays me. So, but also, I have a website where I occasionally update and maybe sometimes say smart things, and it is Bobby Mathews with one T, so BobbyMathews.net.
And that's how people get a hold of you if they've got writing business they need help with.
Absolutely. They can find me on there, or they can email Mathews, again, Mathews with one T, Mathews.freelance@gmail.com.
Cool. That's awesome, man. It has really been a pleasure talking to you. I
Same
look
here,
forward
guys.
to having you on the show again. This has worked out great. It sounds a lot like we have so much of a similar interest. I look forward to working with you in the future, man. This has been a wonderful day. A great surprise. This is the easiest interview ever. Because we're just having the fun talking.
Nice. Well, listen, I appreciate it, man. Thank y'all for having me.
Thank you.
Oh, anytime, and you're more than welcome to join the Tapped Out.
You ever got anything
network,
you need to plug or want to do anything, just let us know, and we'll get it up on our Twitter. You can come on and plug it, boss.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Okay. Well, have a great day, man. Thank you so much.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for joining us again on our first interview on the interview series we're going to start here on the Tapped Out Wrestling Podcast Network. Once again, we would definitely like to thank Mr. Bobby Mathews for joining us, and definitely want to recommend you check him out at a lot of his articles over at ProWrestlingStories.com. That is ProWrestlingStories.com. Lots of interesting articles. If you look on our Twitter feed, it'll be there. We're going to link to some of that. Also, check out the book that he had mentioned right there at the end of the show. But definitely, guys, here we are wrapping up another show. We want to make sure that you know how to get a hold of us. Obviously, we want to check us out. We are at Twitter at Tapped Out Pod, at Tapped Out Pod. You can find us on Facebook at Tapped Out Wrestling Podcast Network. That is Tapped Out Wrestling Podcast Network. Of course, if you want to email us, have any questions, hey, if you got any questions for Mr. Mathews, you want to, forward them to us, and we can kind of get them over to him and see maybe any questions you got. You can send us emails at tappedOutWrestlingPodcast@gmail.com. That is tappedOutWrestlingPodcast@gmail.com. Make sure you check out the website at tappedOutWrestlingPodcast.com. It has all of the links there. Again, that is tappedOutWrestlingPodcast.com. Make sure you check us out. On there, we have all of our, places you can find us, the iTunes, the Google Plays, the Stitchers, the YouTube, etc. You'll be able to find us there and subscribe. And then also, before we get out of here, make sure you check out some of the sponsors of the show. We have the Fight app. We're big proponents of the Fight app. Carries lots and lots of pro wrestling, free and pay-per-views, as well as MMA, boxing, and karate, grappling as well. Definitely well worth the sign up is free. So go to our website, just click on the link, download the app. Of course, from time to time, you'll see it on our Twitter feed as well as our Facebook page. Last but not least, make sure you check us out. The Amazon link, our Amazon affiliate link that's on our webpage. It's the same thing. It's on our Twitter feed from time to time and as well as on the Facebook page. What we ask for you to do is click on that and bookmark that link and replace your old Amazon.com link on your browser that you got there. And use our link. Basically, it's just a way to help support the show. It doesn't cost you a dime extra, but they do kick back some commission and referral fees to us to help keep the content coming. And hopefully we can get you more great guests like Mr. Mathews joining us today. We really enjoyed bringing you this, and hopefully we look forward to a lot new interviews coming down the pipe. With that, guys, when we get out of here, man, it means it's time to tap out.